Hello, my name's Alec McGale. Today I'm going to be describing what me and my team worked on for the last year or so after the S4 conference, during and after the S4 conference 2021. We proposed and we worked on using Neo4j, which is a graph database, to hold and allow for the interactive exploration of scientific metadata, the entities that make up the production of knowledge and their connections to each other and over time. Neo4j is just a graph database, so it has a query language, it has a storage and a memory layer, and Bloom, as you see in the title, this is the visualization tool that was built by Neo4j, which allows for this more interactive exploration where you can click on a node and follow some set of its links. And the idea was that we can just sort of doop, 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 show the structure of some part of what is a massively rich and complex data structure. So you'll learn a little bit further down this presentation what Bloom looks like and how we were thinking of using it. But for now, let me just describe what the project proposal entailed. Oh, and first, let me just mention the rest of my team. So we have Stanislava from the University of Hawaii at Manoa, Monica at the University of Delhi, and Jody at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. We're sort of scattered across the globe. I'm from Cornell, although I'm currently in my van office right now in some random part of the country. So COVID, in some weird way, made this possible, instigating a purely virtual S4 and then a purely virtual set of collaborations afterward, which I found to be incredibly fruitful. Okay, so on to the workshops that we had planned for this project. So we planned 2 workshops. The first had the purpose of educating ourselves fully on Neo4j, Bloom, Ara, all the tools that we would need as a science of science researcher. You know, that's my perspective. It's not all of the teammates' perspectives. A science for science researcher that wants to use Neo4j to explore very large, rich data sets. And what we would do is, primarily I was leading this part of the project, would make the data and the queries, which would allow, for my own purposes, an exploration of some interesting part of this. And you can tell it's all still very vague. So the idea of this workshop was to make it much more concrete and to brainstorm and work with the members of the workshop to create new queries, new ways of using Bloom, new ideas, which I wouldn't have just thought of on my own. This workshop hasn't happened yet for a variety of reasons, which I'll discuss shortly. The second, we put this one second because now we understand Neo4j, Bloom, etc. So the second the second project would be to present some institutional information for the University of Hawaii at Manoa, in particular to CIS students in the PhD program, giving them a tool to explore their own department that they are coming into, trying to feel out whether this is a better way to sensitize people to all of the nuances of a department that usually go unsaid. So who took what classes, what grants are attached to which professors and students, and what's the makeup of this, but in a more exploratory way. And I'll show you a little bit of what that means. So the current plan is to sort of roll them together. And let me show you what I worked on specifically for science of science researchers for the first workshop. So first I had to insert in some data. This already was a bit challenging for me. Inserting large amounts of data into Neo4j often was cripplingly slow, not very reliable. It would balloon memory, often would slow to a halt, and diagnosing why exactly that isn't my forte. So it took me many tries to get some workable amount of data into that. I still wasn't able to push in something like all of sociology, which would consist of about 150,000 papers, all of their authors, all of the papers they cite, all of the papers that they cite's authors, and institutional information, and then some other things. So we're up to tens of millions of nodes inserted into Neo4j, which I just couldn't wrangle. But once I was able to wrangle just a few journals from sociology over the last 150 years, the most central ones, I spent a lot of time trying to write useful queries for exploration within Neo4j and Bloom. So this is Neo4j Bloom. I'm just going to switch to it. We have a blank canvas because there's nothing on it. A search bar, which gives us these like useful search phrases, which still don't really work to my satisfaction, to be honest. And then once you enter this in, get a query result, you can zoom in on any node, see exactly what it is and what the relationship type is. We can, on a meta level, format these in any way we like. I mean, within Bloom's restrictions. And if you right click on these, we can expand. So we want to know, well, who cited this? There's actually 1,300. Oh, I've got multiple things selected. So, yeah, so there's an author of this one, Bean V, which it's just extracted from here. We can then expand. He's only written one paper, so not a very interesting expansion. This paper was cited by these two. Sorry, it's already becoming quite a mess. These two papers, and we could expand to see who wrote them. So in this way, you can see how the intuition. I mean, maybe you can't see it. It's pretty. I'm pretty bad at working with this tool, let's say. But you can see where the motivation came from to have a more exploratory way to move around this. We can also create entirely new types of edges which don't exist in the. Let me just clear this first. But we can create, using these queries, new types of edges which don't exist. So co-citation, that involves two authors writing a paper which cite the same thing. So based on that sort of four-way or four-step relationship, I want to create a single tie. You can write cipher queries to do that. I'm going to do something weird, which is just search for all authors whose names start with P. Just kidding. I'm going to look for somebody's in particular. Oh, this query doesn't work anymore. Oh, man. So all these queries are created in this saved cipher tab. And they're actually incredibly useful. So you can have something in the search box, which then matches to something in the query, and determine exactly what you want to return. You can return multiple nodes and edges, or just nodes, or just edges. Often they get pretty complicated, and they're sort of difficult to debug. So these end up taking me a long time, and they're very frustrating. So this is something that I think would make sense for me to push out if I'm going to help others do this sort of research, push out some typical queries. It looks like this is new. Bloom has added scene actions, which I checked out the documentation. This actually allows you to choose a specific node, and instead of just expand, there is this scene actions tab, and you can run a query on every node that's selected based on what type it is to do something more sophisticated than expand, which I explicitly wanted while I was working with this, and it was something of a roadblock to making this usable for me. So let's just say it's been a long time since I've worked on this, I guess 4 or 5 months, so apologies for the poor presentation, but let's just say that I wasn't able to make it work well for me, and actually I thought it was quite a headache, and if I wanted to do any of these analyses, it's better to just use Python, for instance, and CSV files, or a database. that I already understand. So this is, I felt that it was hard to convince people, given what I've been able to produce, that this is useful, and thus I'm not ready still to run the workshop. I think at the minimum, I want to create some sort of YouTube video which would help put down what I've been able to do. But we've sort of rolled all of our resources after that long fight to this second workshop, which is where we're actually using the funding from S4. And I'll pass it to Monica to explain a bit, a lot, about what that looks like.
Hi, my name is Tasha, and thank you, Alec, for presenting so far about our project. And I'm going to tell you a little bit what happened before our workshop and why it got a little bit delayed, because it is really tangential to my dissertation research, and I'm about to graduate in 1 year, so I'm still working on it. And the model, it was still in development and still under construction, and I was still collecting the data to populate the network, especially from the students. So students' perspective is also included in the graph, not only publicly available data. So I did collect that data, but I still need to ingest it in the graph in order for it to be complete as possible at this moment. And the next thing we need to do is to do some network science analytics in order to have more quality and more expressive visualization that will be meaningful for the end user population. So let me tell you a little bit more about what the graph is about and how it looks like. And this is the model behind the network that you just saw how it looks like when you run few queries. So I came to this model by doing a research on the population of the student population of this interdisciplinary program, which is called Communication and Information Sciences Interdisciplinary PhD Program at University of Hawaii at Manoa. And I'm myself a student of that program. So my end users and the research populations are the students of that program. So imagine you are a new student, you come into this domain that has over 40 faculty that are from 4 different departments. And this is computer sciences and library and information sciences and communication and communicology, and the information and technology management from business school. And you need to carve your way through that program and through the requirements of the program. And some of the requirements is to pick a supervisor that you're going to work with, pick another 4 that are going to be in your dissertation committee, choose the classes you're going to take aside from the required classes, and then take some exams and publish a paper. All of that before defending your proposal. So based on my research, and though that was some interviews, some usability studies, content analysis, I came to this model, and it's human-centered model. The person is in the center, and that person can be a student, can be a professor, can be alumni, and they are affiliated with a certain department. So this model is kind of organized in the 4 different subcategories that are color-coded. But before going to that, I want to show some of the attributes of a person node that is central, that has not only academic records such as progress, stage. So if you are still working on your requirements, if you're ABD, or you're preparing for your dissertation proposal still, but also affiliation information. Where did you work? Where are you working now? And some personal information such as hobbies, or if you're a caregiver of somebody, which neighborhood you're living in. Because when I did interviews, students said they feel lonely. So I'm trying to figure out what could be the way to connect people with each other, to connect the nodes together. So this is something that could be useful. We'll see if it is really. And the goal of this graph is to capture and transfer not only the explicitly encoded information, but also this tacit knowledge that resides within the community. So we know what we know because we went through things. I know about this course and I have all the material for the course. So maybe I can help somebody out who intends to take that course. So this is something that I try to capture through attributes of person has taken or has taken exam or course, and there is an attribute called reflection. So this is like a qualitative open-ended space where people can put their reflection on the course or on the exam because they told they don't want to say specifically for a professor, they don't want to do social rating, but courses and exams they would do. And I have some very interesting inputs when I collected the data from students on different courses and exams, and I hope that will be helpful for new students too. And so this blue section is about courses, exams, and department of affiliation. And also it will capture for students which courses they are teaching. So this is some information that you can't really find. It's not out there. It's not that represented, but I wanted to represent our perspective too. The bottom purple nodes are about research and lab and publications that people are have authored, are involved in, and the basis of the database are like somewhere around 270 publications and dissertations, maybe a little bit more, and they are all tagged with the yellow nodes, and which I'm going to talk in a little bit. So this is where I get the co-authorship network too, and affiliation network where people are working in the same lab or researches. Also, on the top are the dissertation, which is of course central node for any PhD student, and it shows the collaboration on this dissertation. So the committee of the dissertation, but also methodologies and tools that are used in dissertation. Also, by the way, these two nodes are connected with other nodes that are not represented in the model for readability purposes. The nodes on the right or the classes of the ontology are what I called boundary objects, because this is somewhere around these we can create interdisciplinary teams of people who are working on more or less the same thing or topics that have different expertises or backgrounds. So we have research topic, which is basically keywords, and then research area, which is your domain, which is discipline. So for me, it's information science, it's human computer science. And then we have domain of application, and that is where your research is situated, in which domain. For me, it's higher education, because I'm looking at academic networks. So these two are the thesauri from New Zealand, and these are controlled vocabularies that are created also by students and by the tagging of the publications, that and all of that has been done both automatically and manually. So currently there are over 5,000 instances in this network and 122 affiliated people, CIS affiliated people, and over 6,000 relationships. And this is all publicly available data. And I have collected with a very lengthy and comprehensive Qualtrics questionnaire some about 10 inputs from students that need still to be ingested. So we have a fuller picture and create very rich multiplex, multi-layer graph that we can play with, because my dissertation is about exploring optimal way to transfer this multi-layer graph information in a way that will convey intuitively information to the end user population, because it gets very hairy at some point as it's very complex. So this is my research, and the research we're doing here is tangential to it because we are doing a different user population and different research question. So another thing that we had a little bit problems completing and doing is that we did somewhere around 4 rounds of IRB reviews before it was approved, mainly because we did it at UH Manoa. They're very specific about, we had to have this training, city training, each of the researchers in the particular format. So that took a while. But finally it is approved, we can do it, we are cleared. But also we found this research paper called Knowledge Graphs versus Hierarchies, an analysis of user behavior and perspectives in information seeking. So we took this paper as a model for our research. They are doing the user experience research study where they're comparing how people interact with knowledge graphs versus thesaurus, so like drop down and hierarchies. We're not doing that part. We're doing knowledge graph versus open web search. So it's somewhere similar, but it gave us a good idea how we could do it and how we could approach our research. So finally, we come to the workshop plan, and we plan to invite 20 prospective students of this program. My research is only working with the current students, but also the newest cohort of CIS students. So this research is gonna go beyond the current students and look how students who have somewhat knowledge of this domain, so these are would interact with this graph. So these are the master students or alumni of 4 affiliated departments that I just mentioned. And we're going to split them into pairs, and each pair will have 1 facilitator because we think that they could use some help with this because it's a new tool. So we want to invite, except for 3 of us, we want to invite the later stage CIS students to be facilitators and pay them a little bit more than the students who are going to be participating in the study. So the money we got from the grant, and thank you very much for that, we intend to spend on this, to pay for the students and to pay for the facilitators. So in that way, I'm hoping to get more of the involvement from my study population. They will know more about the graph that will be hopefully helpful for my research later. But in this study, we want to look at how they will interact with Neo4j Bloom visualization tool per se, and if they find this knowledge graph approach helpful at all. So, and also to ask them where could be space for improvement. We have developed 2 questionnaires, and one is the intake questionnaire, which is mostly the demographics information, so their age, and to measure how much they're interested in this program or how much they're familiar with this program, to make sure that they know the requirements of the program, because the queries we're going to run are related to those requirements, and to see where they are, which degree they are pursuing, and what is their field of study. Gender, if they used other visualization tools, and so on. So this is the first questionnaire. Then we're going to do the demo of the graph, explain the research, why we are doing it, do the demo of Neo4j and Bloom, which is their Neo4j graph, that database their visualization tool. And then we're going to split into breakout rooms and let them try out different queries and compare those queries to open web search. After that, we plan to do the post-workshop questionnaire. Again, the same question. Some of the questions are the same, to rate the quality of the workshop and to see if they learned something new from it. to see if they think this could be helpful for their process of looking for information in academic programs in general, and if they have used some graph exploration tool before, but also if they found it easy or hard to search with it with the Neo4j, and did they think they could use it independently later, and if they have some suggestions on what could be fixed in the database itself, and then see if they prefer graph or open web search. So either or, and elaborate on the choice from the question above. Same thing for the exams, same thing for the information on courses or research topics. And how would you rate this tool for discovering other students that may provide you with needed information? So this is the tacit information needs, requirements need, where you ask other people directly about their experience, because you won't be able to find everything online, of course. So how would they rate this as a general CIS program tool? And would it be useful for the new students, and if there is something they particularly like or disliked, and is there something that is not available on web, and if there are some suggestions that they would provide for us to improve this tool. So we will analyze all the data. We have planned to gather together with the other facilitators to compare the notes and discuss what happened. Each of the breakout room will be recorded, so we will analyze it, and then later on we will transcribe and code, and hopefully we plan to publish. These are some of the venues that we are hoping to be able to prepare in time to submit. And this is what we have done so far. We want to thank you very much for listening to us, and to apologize again for not being there to hear. Especially, we feel sorry we didn't hear the feedback from you in person. It is what it is. That won't happen again. But thank you so much for listening to this. And if you have something to tell us, you can always write to us, and we will be happy to hear your thoughts. Thank you very much again. My name is Stanislava, and these are our emails you can write to us. Bye-bye.